Everyone. Think I am live, so fingers crossed you're able to see me soon. Um, as always, I'll start off slowly so you get a bit of a chance to kind of play catch up and see what's going on. But I have got some really interesting little projects and things we've been working on to share with you now. And I've got a few hints and tips of things that are coming up that I can't share yet. So if there's anyone in here now who has been gotten, if you've gotten your spring or I'm getting my seasons wrong, your winter seasons project, if you've got a hold of your winter seasons project and you're getting started on it, it's all color work and steeking, then pop a comment up there. Let me know how you're getting on. And most particularly, if you're trying steeking, if you've tried steeking before, if this is your first time, let us know how you're getting on. Give us some stories. Give us all of the insight into what your steeking is doing and how you're getting on with it. So I'm hoping that you're enjoying the project and that you're enjoying steeking. You may have spotted a little bit in the last a few days. We've been talking a small bit on the very social channels about steeking. Trying not to scare you all because it's not scary. It's like it's one of those things that in anticipation it feels a little scary simply because you're cutting your knitting and there's no going back from it. But there's small projects, small swatches, nice, easy ways of working your way into it. Hey, Monica from Utah, you haven't started it yet, but soon. Have you done a steeking project before? If you have, even if it's not this one, just let me know. I'm really curious to see if it's something that people have done before. I know before I did my first steek, I thought that it sounded insane, right? You're going to cut your knitting, and I didn't understand why. And as I learned a little bit more and the kind of things you can do with it, it started making a lot more sense. So the primary reason you're going to steek is color work. Like you can do it for other reasons if you want to convert something that's a sweater into a cardigan, but very often the main reason to do it is for color work because color work is easiest and should really always be worked in the round. So if you want an item that's flat and not in the round, then you're going to have to cut it or find some way of changing it from in the round to flat. And that's kind of where steeking came about. A bit like with short rows, which scares people, the concept of short rows is not difficult, as in short rows, you just turn back and forth um, where you want to make a row slightly shorter than it is. It gets difficult because you want to hide where the turn is. Steeking, the cutting obviously is not terribly difficult. What's challenging and what scares people is how do you go about actually making sure that that cut is going to stay reinforced. So that's where the challenge is. I'm looking over here, Monica. You've done many Fair Isle and Norwegian sweaters. Oh, you're an old pro then. You can fly ahead. You can jump in and kind of give people some heads up. I'm curious as well as to what type of steeking do you like doing, or rather, what kind of reinforcing. So I'll talk a small bit about different ways you can reinforce as well there. Hey, Liz, nice to see you. Sheila, you'll be trying steeking this year and you're new to color work and you're loving it. Fantastic. Color work was something I came to late as well. I found it a little intimidating and I kind of shied away from it somewhat. But then gradually, as I kind of went through different challenges knitting wise, I realized actually I might as well give it a shot. And it was really enjoyable. It was a different process. It took me a while to get used to using two hands. But once I got more comfortable with that, the whole process sped up a lot. Hey, Beverly from Canada. You keep saying you're going to try steeking, but you keep chickening out. Well, this is your invitation to steek. This is going to be the year of steeking. You might end up just starting on a small little project like this. This is the sample that I've been using on social to to scare the living daylights out of everyone, but not really, obviously, but just to show the fact that you can just do a very small little color work tube, reinforce it, and then cut it. And the benefit of that is you can test everything out. You can see how the reinforcement works. You can see if you've got the best scissors for doing it. You can see if the yarn you're using for your bigger project is going to work well with steeking and if it holds. So it gives you a load of information doing a little project like this. Um, with the kind of mistakes I made when I started steeking, first one was wrong kind of yarn. If you use the wrong kind of yarn, if it's not sticky enough, it's going to be like you can still do it, you can still cut it, but you're not going to get as much adhesion on the inside. And the second one that really annoyed me that I hadn't really seen talked about before was this is a crochet steek. So there's a crochet chain worked on each side of the part that I'm going to cut, and it holds the stitches from the steek and attaches it to the stitch next to it. And I didn't realize that you can't use the same yarn as your project because it's going to be too thick. When you do a crochet chain, it pushes everything out, and I ended up when I cut with a real wavy edge, and it was very hard to hide. So I have learned that you are really best off using something like a fingering weight, very firm yarn, which means that it's going to be nice and small and it's not going to flare out. So small yarn for a crochet stick is really useful. Um, I'm looking over here. Kathy, you've steeked a lot, mostly Marie Wallen's designs. It's pretty straightforward once you understand the concept. Yeah, it absolutely is, which is why swatch or a small project, some of the ones I'm going to go through, are a very good place to start. Monica, you like using sticky yarn because it doesn't need reinforcing, and you like at least an 8-stitch steek to make sure and you make sure the colors alternate so they aren't all on top of each other. Perfect. Yeah, and if you've got sticky yarn, you can get away without reinforcing. I do think that for anyone who's their first time through, reinforcement is a very, very big reassuring factor. So the three ways I know of reinforcing are the one that I've mainly used, which is the crochet steek. You do need to stick your yarn for that because you're also relying on the yarn to stick together a bit. The one that I've seen and a lot of other people use as well would be a sewn steek. So it's exactly it sounds like you just sew a line of sewing on each side and you cut in between. You can use that with any kinds of yarn basically, because if it's not sticky, the sewing will actually hold the whole thing in place. So that one is actually a lot more flexible, but you run the risk of kind of stretching it all out on the sides. And if you're like me, you don't have a sewing machine, then you're kind of stuck with that. So the benefit of the crochet one is that you don't need a sewing machine. You can actually just use it as it is. As Monica said, if you've got a very sticky yarn and you've got a wide enough bridge, as in where you cut is a good few stitches back from where you're going to fold it, the stickiness of the yarn, it will unravel a little bit on the edge, but you're not going to get more than a couple of stitches unraveling. And the third method, which I haven't used before, but if anyone has, you can get kind of comments up there, is a felted steek. And again, it's going to have to be a really woolly yarn and one that will felt. And you get a felting needle, and just on each side of where you're going to cut, you needle felt, so that you're doing what would effectively happen with a sticky yarn anyway, but you're just forcing it to do it, so you get much less unraveling. So that's going to work with a nice sticky yarn. But the crochet one tends to be my preference because it's a little bit more multifunctional, and for newer people steeking, it's quite reassuring. Must go over here as well. I think I've missed a couple of. Ruth, you frequently work a swatch in the round for circular knitting, and cut the swatch for measuring flat. Perfect. So basically, you've been steeking regardless. So it's same thing. The only difference being if you haven't done a reinforcing on each side and you want to do it for the final project, you can go ahead and actually try it out. Sheila, you were told to practice steeking old jumpers first if you're scared on precious hand knits. That's a really good idea. Yeah, and in fact, there was a couple of years ago in a craftsy class, it was one on sweater surgery. And we ended up doing a lot of sewn steeking in it. Myself and a friend, we got a whole pile of sweaters sent in to us of people who were unhappy with them, letting us know why they were unhappy with it. Sometimes it was the neckline, other times it was too wide and things like that. And for the neckline, what we actually ended up doing was sewn steeks very often. So she got her sewing machine out and sewed where we wanted the neckline to be, cut out the knitting above it, and it held it in place. It's effectively what machine knitters often do. They'll frequently just knit the actual shape, blocks of shapes or triangles reinforce, and then cut it out. So it's the same kind of thing. We usually wouldn't do it with hand knitting. It can you have to be kind of careful too, because if you're doing a sewing machine, it can stretch the knitting fabric out. So you have to be very careful that the actual stitch size you use doesn't stretch it out, but it's still close enough that it's not going to. Um, am I going to say it's close enough that it's going to hold us? That if the gaps are too wide, it's not going to do the required job. Um, Sheila, you were told to, oh, sorry, I read that one already. Liz, you were surprised how straightforward steeking was. It sounds more difficult than it is. Absolutely. And that's kind of, I think, what the swatch and small projects are really good for doing is it takes the fear factor away. It makes you realize that it seems daunting, but because there's very clear steps, there's a few different ways of doing it. It's actually pretty straightforward. And I promise, go through some of the projects and show you what we've actually got once we've kind of gone through talking about steeking. Diane, good morning from Manhattan. You're working on Galanta. Oh, fantastic. I've just been looking over the Galanta here as well, actually, because I've had a couple of new people knitting it with some queries. So I was going back and refreshing myself on projects. Kathy, you like the crochet method to assure that you've cut every stitch. You've sewn on the machine, but you're afraid it won't lay down neatly. I totally know what you mean, because with this one, it flips back, and usually, see on the edge here, there's a couple of bridge stitches. So when I say bridge stitches, it's you're alternating between the two colors, and it's designed to be hidden. All you're doing is going between whatever colors that you've got in your row. And then this is the edge of the stitch pattern over here. So when you pick up on the edge of the bridge, you pick up stitches all the way along here. And when you pick those up and you do your edging, this whole part folds down really neatly. And then that's the part that you sew down afterwards. So you can sew it down, it holds it down. Even if it's got a sewn one, it's still going to lie pretty flat, I think. I don't think the sewn looks quite as attractive as a crochet one does, but you do have the option of putting a ribbon or something nice over like that. Kate Davies, a couple of years ago, she used to what she used. I don't know if it was called. It was a sandwich steek or a sandwich buttonhole, where you pick up stitches, you do twice the length you want, and then she folded the second half over. When she did her bind off, the place where you picked up the stitches, she bound off together with it, and so the whole steek got folded inside and it got sandwiched into the actual buttonhole. So it was completely invisible, and the buttonhole basically totally covered the actual steek, which I thought was a really tidy way of hiding the steek and allowing you to cut it but hide it at the same time. Um, where are we? I'm looking down here. Monica, you do reinforce and you like the crochet method. Sewing is your last choice. If you don't use the right thread, you run the risk of the thread actually wearing the knitting out. Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't realize that it could happen, but I mean, it makes sense. But I am the wrong person to ask about sewing, because I have a sewing machine, but I haven't taken it out in a couple of years, and I'm very slow to sew my knitting. I'm much more inclined to do something I can do by hand. So I feel I've got more control over it. And you can also hand stitch. Everyone assumes that when you're sewing, you have to take out a sewing machine, but it's also possible to hand stitch if you're going along. But the has doing a steak with nice woolly yarn does make a big difference, because it gives you a nice big, just a bit of structure, bit of stickiness, and it's just much safer. Hi, Elsa Louise. Happy and Balak as well to you. Is it St. Bridget's Day today? I think it may be. We've got a new bank holiday in Ireland next Monday for St. Bridget's Day. Some of you may know Bridget crosses would have been made in schools here. You make it out of the rushes and you crisscross over, and then you tie the ends together. It's fairly straightforward to make, but it actually looks really nice. So if you're curious about it, you can look up Bridget's crosses. They're just made with rushes or reeds and things like that. Um, Make sure it's 100% thread. Nylon is what will cut it. Oh, fantastic. Thank you for letting me know that. That actually makes sense, because nylon is much harsher in your sewing thread. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, what pattern am I wearing? Sheila, I am wearing, this is Rusty Lines, but it is a it's the first version of Rusty Lines. So this one was in, I think it was Yacht Daughter is what I knit it in. So it was the gauge was slightly looser, and the neck, which meant that the neck was very open. So I picked up stitches around here, and I've actually put this modification in for it, and I just knit a big tube that just sits around my neck like this, and it filled it in, and it gave me kind of a higher neck as I'm going along. But Rusty Lines is the name of the pattern. It's actually one of my favorites. It's simple but interesting. So if you haven't knit it before, have a look at it. The original is in newer worsted. This version, as I said, is knit in Yacht Daughter, and one of the yarns I've got here, the Gilliatt, which I'm going to be talking to you a small bit about in relation to the seasons. I actually think will give you a very similar version to this. It's a little heavier, so you'll either have to fill in the neck like this, or possibly size down a little. But the wooliness of it is going to come very close to you. So I've I've started with the Steeking. I'd intended on talking about the Seasons Club, or rather the digital version, and the fact that people have gotten the Seasons Club and we've had our launch, the patterns have come out. And if you're not part of it, but you actually would really like to learn how to work color work, and more specifically color work and steeks, then it's a really good place to learn, because there's several different patterns all designed by Emer Early, and they go through a couple of different ways of using steeks, and a couple of different patterns in it. So they're designed for either a newer colorwork knitter, so with the basics described all the way through, or a new steek knitter, or perhaps if you just want to have a little bit more practice or just like the patterns. So the first one here is, oh, I nearly lost my teapot. This is the lace tea cozy, which I just love. This one is in Gilliatt, Gilliatt. The colors were specific to the club, but we do have Gilliatt on the website. And so you can kind of see what you're looking for is two colors that go quite nicely together with a third pop color. So the three colors, I'll pull that off in a minute and show you. These are the three ones that were from the club. So you can kind of see the three together. And I've pulled out a few variants that are on the website that I thought might look pretty good together as well. Oh, try and get these up. These are all Gilliatt. So we've got, this is Nuit here, and this is the Sauve, and this Poivre Blanc. And I think the three of those work really nicely, because you can see these two could be striped together, and then the creamier one could be used for the pop color in the end. But you can kind of pick out any three colors once you know what the pattern is as you're going through. So the pattern, there's one, two, three, four patterns altogether in the club. So this is the tea cozy version, which the way I describe it is it feels a little bit like a short, fat hat. So you start with the edging, you've got this stitch pattern across here, and and then you end up with the steek opening here on this side. So you can see it's been picked up and sewn in underneath here, and the same on the other side. So each of those is going to be for your spout and for the handle. So that is the tea cozy version. If you are not a tea cozy person, there's coffee cozy. So this is the coffee cozy, and you can see it's very similar pattern, but it's just a tube, and then it is cut so that you can sew the two ones, or you can button the two ones on together and take it on and off. So very straightforward way of learning steeking, and the stitch pattern is really pretty. And because it's a heavier yarn, it's kind of a heavy worsted weight yarn, it knits up really quickly. So you can actually see some of the actual patterns popping up from people who've been knitting through them already. If you jump into the digital version of the club now, you will also be able to pop into the actual chat forum, and you'll see what people are doing. If you're not into steeking, but you like the color work, there's the same stitch pattern that comes in a hat version. You can see at the edge of this, to bring it in a little bit tighter, you've got the 1x1 edging on this, where it's twisted stitches and holds it in nice and tight. And this is my version. See, this is the one, it's a lot more subtle, the colors I did. This is the tea cozy without the top on it yet. So you can see how there's grays and pinks and a kind of almost a white color pop. So this is much, much more subtle than the other one, just to give you an idea of what the two end up looking like together. Um, but anyone who has been working through it, what do you have any tips for anybody in your steeking? Or, I mean, we've had a few up there, but if you have more, it would be really great if you pop them up because it's just it's as you say, when you actually do it, it's pretty straightforward. It's not very difficult. It's the anticipation and the worry about it. So I think some of the great tips are the old sweater tip is fantastic. And Monica, thank you so much about the sewn steak, about not using nylon thread. If you do use cotton thread to avoid wearing down the fabric. Fantastic tip. Um, my big one is just start with knitted swatches and use, if you're using a crochet steak, to use a fingering weight yarn so that it's much smaller, small crochet hook. And it's very easy to see each of the stitches as you're picking them up and go slowly. Oh, and another one, when you're doing the crochet one, don't forget to pick up the cast on and the bind off on each end because you're going to be cutting through those as well. So if you're done attaching those to something, you can end up getting a little bit of fraying there. And the big thing as well is if you do end up getting fraying, because you're going to be whip stitching all of this down on the inside, you've actually got a chance to anchor in each of those yarns. So you can kind of rescue it as you go along as well. Last pattern that was in the club is the Realta Mitts. So this one also uses Colourwork, but it's using this kind of a slip stitch star pattern. So you can see here, I've got two different versions. These ones are in a medium size. Let me put these on here, and a much brighter, more dramatic color. I love the colors in this. Actually, they're really nice. Like I've got a dark coat, and I think these look just gorgeous with it. But that's the medium size, and then this is the smaller size. So I find the smaller size, my tendency is to go for kind of snugger mitts, because I find that it stays on better and doesn't get as baggy. This one, if you know you want to put it over something else or you don't like anything tight around your hand, the medium size is good. But like they work well in both. They just look a little different. Medium would be always what I'd go for if I had a full mitt because you want movement in the fingers. They need to be able to move around. The fingerless are a little different. They've kind of got a slightly different reason for being because they're trying to, it's more of a snug. I think of them as like socks for your hands to a certain extent, if you know what I mean. But yeah, these are all Emer early designs. And if you're looking for it and you want to get hold of them and learn how to do this, it's Winter Seasons Club 2324, the digital version. So we will make sure to pop a link down here in the bottom so that if you want to go in and try any of those, you can. Now, before I finish up, I do have something very exciting to tell you about, or something that I want to get you to put on your calendar. Valentine's Day, the 14th, I was going like, what day is Valentine's? The 14th of February, that's going to be when I'm back here again. It is a Wednesday, and it will be at the same time. It'll be at 3:30, but I'm going to have a very, very special guest. I'm not going to tell you yet what it is. In the next couple of weeks, we will have a few little hints as we're going along through on our social media, so keep an eye out for that. I'll let you know before it comes, but I think you're going to be very excited to hear what she has to say, which is a very, very interesting person. And it's tied with a big project that we're working towards that will launch in the middle of February. But we will spill the beans and chat with that other special person that I have to be careful because I'm going to end up giving more hints that I mean to away. But it's going to be the 14th of February. We're going to be talking with her, and it should be a very enjoyable chat. If you have any questions in the meantime, pop them in here. This is going to be saved afterwards. You can go over and actually watch it again, or if there's anything you want to see. I'll put links for the digital club, the Gilliatt, if you want to get either extra yarn or you want to put your own colors together. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Bye, everyone. Have a great week and a great weekend.